Today, I do not apologize.
Who's got it better? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know?
This is a tough team right here.
You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up.
That's right, Matt Kirby. We are back live. Feels weird being, doing a live show. Monday, it was very quiet. It was a little bit eerie. It was weird. Just Trent and I, Trent in his basement, me in a bedroom. Describing it. Just talking about football with each other. Yeah, I don't know. We talked about it. Trent, how did you feel? Like, what was the vibe like not doing a live show? It was a little bit weird for me. How did you feel about it? I know you texted me afterwards. You said you thought it was pretty efficient.
Yeah, like it was really weird to start off with just because you're used to looking at the comments and people were chiming in right away. But
yeah,
I mean, the more like I kind of sat back and thought about it, I thought it was pretty good actually, because it was just you and I talking. There was nothing else going on. It was just strictly just talking about football back and forth.
Didn't have a bunch of assholes in the comments, you know, throwing jabs at us, trying to, instigate and start fights. Yeah, no, I thought it was okay, but I'll be honest, man, the live shows are where it's at. I really love the fan interaction, and that's what gets me excited for Fan-Led Wednesday. That's right. Matt says he can't. That's one of the issues. So we want you guys in here for that. But obviously, again, it is Fan-Led Wednesday, and so you guys are really going to, determine how long the show goes, how much we talk about. If you've got questions, get them in the comment section. If you've got things. No, that's not what we're saying, CJ. We do want you here. So that's where we're at here. We want to be back live, and I don't know if you guys saw it on Monday, but once again, just to reiterate, the plan is pre-record show on Monday, and then we're back live on Wednesday. We'll be back at 6:00. Normally, we had to make a little bit of an adjustment today. Back at 6:00 live on Wednesdays for Fan-Led Wednesdays, and then Friday we do our game previews and all of that stuff. So you're still going to get 2 live shows a week. Who knows? Maybe there's a situation where we got to go live more than twice during the week if there's some breaking news. But that's the tentative schedule right now. Right out of the gate, we've got Nick from the YouTube page. The profile picture here is just, he says it sounds like it's Alex Orji and Davis Warren. I don't know. Do we just want to jump right into that right off the bat? Because that seems like a pretty big topic. I mean, let's just do it. Let's do it. I mean, we got to give this guy his flowers. First question out. I mean, sort of a comment. So we'll just riff on this a little bit. Let's start it with, though, the Big Ten crew was in Ann Arbor. I believe they were there yesterday, unless they recorded it the day before. But either way, it aired yesterday. And I told you this, Trent. I mean, look, I'm glad that the Big Ten crew was there and had the opportunity to take a look at fall camp and see what things look like and give us all this incredible information. But to be honest, like, if local media would get the same opportunity, like, we could be telling you these things, right? We understand these guys. We cover these guys on a daily basis. And so, hey, we'll take what we can get. The crew was there. They had a pretty large group that was there. Jake Butt was there with the Big Ten crew. And we heard a lot. We got a lot of feedback about what this team looks like, and I guess what the expectation is for the defending national champions. Obviously the general belief is that Michigan lost too much to be competitive, but sounds like the BTN crew, they disagree a little bit. They can see that there's a lot of new faces, but those guys also got, considerable reps last year, just given how deep Michigan was. And so even though there's new faces, it's not like this team is inexperienced and they lack, veteran guys. And so I put out the article today, Nick, from the YouTube page. We're going to get to that quarterback situation here. I put out the article today, the 6 observations from fall camp. And since Nick took us there, let's just go there right out of the gate. So, Trent, by the way, did you have the opportunity to watch the Big Ten, the fall camp preview for Michigan, or were you out of pocket during that?
I was mostly on a pocket, but I saw quite a few short videos on it and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm pretty well versed in what happened.
Okay, well, let's get to Nick's comment right from the get. He says it looks like it's Alex Orji and Davis Warren. It sure sounds like it. And Dave Revson, again, a Big Ten network. I would just love to be able to see this for myself. I mean, this would have put to bed so much speculation for so long. But, we knew that Jack Tuttle was dealing with something. It sounds like that issue continues to linger. He's working through an injury. And Dave Revson on BTN, he said, I quote, it's not going to be Jack Tuttle, in reference to the starting quarterback to open the season. It's not going to be Jack Tuttle, at least initially. He's working his way back from an injury, so it's a two-man race at quarterback right now. And yes, Nick, you are correct. Those two guys are Alex Orji and Davis Warren. So maybe we'll just start right there, Trent. Alex Orji, Davis Warren. I think we kind of, I don't know, maybe we jumped the shark a little bit. We counted Davis Warren out of this race, but it sounds like he's squarely in it. And from what I heard, I mean, he might be the best pure passer that Michigan has right now. Obviously, as a senior, he's a veteran. The in-game statistics aren't necessarily where you would like them to be, but overall, I mean, we've seen flashes of it in the spring game. So when you hear it's Alex Orji, Davis Warren, I don't know, man, does that get you excited? Does that have you feeling confident about where things are headed? What do you do with that information?
Man, well, Alex Orji, I've been very outspoken. I think he's going to be the starting quarterback for Michigan. So it's not surprising to hear his name right in there. I actually said a couple shows ago that it was starting to sound like it might be a Davis Warren against Alex Orji battle. I wasn't fully aware that Jack Tuttle was injured, so which is why his name wasn't coming up as much. I just know that Michigan players and coaches were really talking up Davis Warren. My issue is, and granted, Davis Warren, he could be making big strides in practice that we don't see. He's looked really good the last two spring games. But when he comes in during actual game time, he's looked very shaky. And granted, Alex Orji, he's thrown one career pass, so it's not like we have a whole lot to go off of with Alex Orji. We've always seen him do is run the football. I want to think that Alex Orji's skill set would better match Michigan's offense going forward. And it's still hard for me to believe that he doesn't take the first snap against Fresno State.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think Alex Orji is going to be the first quarterback out of the gate when you see Michigan take the field on August 31st against Fresno State in primetime, 7:30 in the Big House. Just 10 days away, by the way. I mean, football season is here. I'm very excited for that. But I agree. I think it's going to be Alex Orji right out of the gate. But Ricky from the Facebook page says he thinks that we're going to 100% see a duo QB tandem there. Do we get into the two quarterback system again? I don't want to go down that road, but when I talked about this and when we brought it up on the show, I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago at this point, a week at least ago, the general belief was that it was Jack Tuttle. He was the number two of that two QB system. Now with Davis and Orji, I still haven't really moved off of that. And from what we heard from the BTN crew, it very much sounds like, and this isn't going to come as much of a surprise, that Alex Orji is still, he is not a finished product, right? He is still a guy who's going to need some development as the season goes along. When you've thrown one college pass in your entire career, you're just going to need to develop at some point. Yeah, you can learn in practice and you can learn in camp, but really you got to do your damage on fall Saturdays. And to be quite honest, I think that that's even one of the more puzzling reasons. Why didn't we see this guy throw a ball? Clearly, Michigan wanted to put him out on the field and wanted to utilize his legs, but it would have been nice in certain situations because we know there was opportunity last year when Michigan was beating the shit out of some opponents. Let Alex Orji get in there and sling it around a little bit and let him just get a feel for the game. But, you're going to have to figure a lot of that out in week one against Fresno State because you got Texas coming to town week 2. So certainly I see a scenario where it is a 2 QB system. A lot of people want to make the comparison between Alex Orji and Jalen Milroe, right? I think in the article that you put out today, Trent, in your bold predictions, you envision this kind of going the way that it went with Alabama and Jalen Milroe, right? Tell people how you see this playing out with Alex Orji.
So I did 10 bold predictions, and my first two, I predicted that Alex Orji would begin the season as the starting quarterback for Michigan. I'm also predicting Michigan to beat Texas, but I look for Orji to possibly struggle a little bit in that Texas game, and that's when they would throw in either Jack Tuttle or Davis Warren for the Arkansas State game. Get them some reps. It's a low end team. You might as well see what these other guys have. But then I really don't like the comparison of Jalen Milroe to Alex Orji, but I kind of envision the same type of thing happening where quarterback play maybe won't be as good against Arkansas State. They end up throwing Orji back in, and I think he ends up running off with the job.
It certainly feels like a realistic scenario. I think that we'll go back to what we were talking about on Monday on the pre-record show. Like, that really is the difference maker in this team right now. And you can tell that everything, when you heard BTN talk about the defense, like, you could feel it. It's like, yes, this defense is elite. Like, we know what Donovan Edwards is. We know what Colston Loveland is. We know that Michigan has weapons offensively. It really does. And we've seen other analysts point this out. If Michigan can get solid play at the quarterback position, the outlook for this season changes dramatically. I mean, you're talking about a potential four-win swing or loss swing, depending on what you get out of the quarterback position. It's the difference between, are you playing for a Big Ten championship? Are you in the college football playoff hunt? Or are you, do you suffer a loss to Oregon, Texas, Ohio State? Are you out of the playoff picture at the end of the year? And so there's so much relying on the quarterback position heading into the season. Greg from the Facebook page says, would Tuttle be the guy if his injury wasn't an issue? Obviously, we're speculating on this. I tend to think that, that would be the case. I know we saw him in limited action last season, but he was like 15 of 17. He showed he's got some mobility. He's got some toughness. I do remember during the spring game last year, heading into the season, one of the things and I was down on the field taking photos. So, you're closer to the action. You kind of just get a better sense of, how is somebody carrying themselves? What's the vibe like down on the field? And one of my biggest takeaways from that was how impressed I was with Jack Tuttle. And, he comes in as a transfer out of Indiana, just the command he had of the offense and of the huddle. And he just kind of felt like, this guy's a veteran guy. You can tell it. You can see it. Is he an elite quarterback? I wouldn't go that far, but is he a guy that can come in and be effective and not lose a football game at that position? Yeah, I think that guy can be Jack Tuttle. So to answer your question, Greg, if Tuttle's injury wasn't an issue, would he be the guy? Yeah, I don't know. I think it might, you might see an Alex Orji, Jack Tuttle type situation. Like, we already know, Kurt Campbell already said, he's made it clear that they are going to use Alex Orji in this offense. So whatever we saw from him last season, just expect to see more of that, but on another level this year. So Alex Orji is going to play a role. I think the question is, what does that look like? I mean, if he's playing a significant role, doesn't that to you really say 2 quarterback system, Trent? Or am I crazy in that?
I'm still in the same situation where I don't think a 2 QB system will work unless either Jack Tuttle or Davis Warren is the starting quarterback. And then you have Alex Orji coming in, basically doing what he did last year, other than, like you kind of said, an extended role. I think he comes in, he runs the ball, he might throw a few passes. I just don't see the vantage point. If Alex Orji is a starting quarterback and he's throwing the ball well, I don't see any reason that you bring in a pocket passer behind him, unless Jaden Davis is just out of this world, like kind of like JJ McCarthy was his freshman year. I just don't see any reason why Michigan would want to bring in a Davis Warren or a Jack Tuttle to spell Alex Orji if Orji's moving the offense and completing passes at a high level.
Yeah, I agree with you. And sorry, I got a little bit distracted. We are going to know the Michigan captains tomorrow. If it doesn't come out tonight, there's some media availability and we're going to be meeting with the captains. And so for those of you that's a big deal at the University of Michigan, being named team captain. I don't have the list of names in front of me, but that list will either be revealed later tonight or tomorrow. So the captains are coming out. But getting back to the quarterback position, Trent, I agree with you. It's not, in a perfect world, you don't want a 2 quarterback system. Like when JJ McCarthy was here, it wasn't a 2 quarterback deal, even though Alex Orji came in and did what he did, in certain reps. Like you knew it was JJ McCarthy. Like he was the guy, and you would prefer to have that every single year. But Nazareth from the Facebook page, I think he makes a good point. Like, if the offense maybe with Michigan was set up a little bit differently and you were going to throw it, 30, 35 times, maybe even 40 times in a game, then maybe you want to defer to more of a pure passer like a Davis Warren or a Jack Tuttle if he was healthy. But I think this might be the difference maker with Alex Orji and the Michigan offense is that, I don't think Michigan's approach offensively, nothing we've heard suggests that it's going to change too much. They might try to toss it around a little bit more, but we know how Sharon Moore operates. He's an offensive line guy. His mantra, motto, whatever you want to call it, is smash. Like, that's how they want to play football. And everything about that type of offensive style of play, when I think about that, I think about Alex Orji. Like, he is a wrecking ball in the backfield. If you can get 10, 15 good reps out of him through the air during a game, I think that the offensive line and the rushing attack of Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings and Benjamin Hall and Cole Cabana and Tavi Dunlap and Jordan Martin, and go down the line. I mean, dude, you got a stable of running backs where you can just do the same thing Michigan did last year. You can pound away at a defense and you can really make it a sort of ground and pound, like, we're going to beat you by 2 touchdowns. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but you're going to have to play our brand of football. And if that's the direction Michigan goes this year offensively, I certainly think Alex Orji can be the guy that gets it done. He just needs to avoid making costly mistakes. You can't turn the ball over. You got to be able to make quick reads and get the ball where it needs to be. And to be honest, some of the feedback we heard, and it didn't come from like some no-name BTN analyst. It came from Jake Butt, who obviously loves the University of Michigan, right? He's not going to try to say things that I think, are stretching the truth or sort of paint Michigan in a bad light. But he did have some feedback about the Michigan offense and the quarterbacks in particular that I thought was interesting. So since we're talking about the observations from fall camp, let's just get into what Jake Butt said right here. And where is it? I saw somebody suggesting that Michigan should just say screw it and run the wing tee. Oh, CJ, of course. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, look, would you be surprised? Would you honestly be surprised if that was Michigan's approach against Texas? Like, we have no desire to even throw the ball. We are just going to run it. If we don't get the first, we're going to punt it, and you can deal with the defense.
Anything that involves running the football in Michigan like that just would not surprise me whatsoever. Anybody that thinks Michigan's just going to open up the playbook, game one, air it out 30, 35 times a game, like it's not happening. Like
it's more likely that they come out of the tunnel wearing leather helmets than they open it up and start slinging it around. I mean, that's Michigan football. So certainly, CJ. I mean, yeah, we could see the wing tee, whatever. The crazy part about it is I think Michigan could be very successful in that type of offense. And I spent so much time about doing this over the last, not so much the last 3 years, but definitely 2021 and 2022. I kept, even though Michigan was winning, I was like, they have to change the offense. They've got to have more firepower. They got to sling it around. They got to do this. They got to do that. And I kept trying to change things. And all that happened was Michigan kept winning, doing things their way. And it ultimately led to a national championship. So I'm off of that. Like I said this on the Monday show, that it's easy to get caught up in, like, you see what, an Oregon offense is going to be capable of potentially, or what Ohio State's offense is going to be capable of potentially. And there's a part of you that wants that element in your own offense. But the reality is that's not what has made Michigan so successful over the last 3 seasons. It's been take care of the ball, have a good stable of running backs that can get you first downs, and lean on an elite defense to really make things difficult for an offense. And I think that formula still exists, even though the quarterback spot is, there's a big unknown that's there. But let me get to what Jake Butt said about the offense and about the quarterbacks in particular. And this is sort of a, it's a, I don't know if it's a lengthy quote, but I'm going to read through it because I think it paints a pretty good picture of what he saw during fall camp. So this is from Jake Butt, again, former tight end at the University of Michigan. He was at fall camp. Here's what he saw when he was out watching the offense go up against the defense. He says, and I quote, "What I saw was you're going against that Wink Martindale Baltimore scheme defense. It's very confusing. A lot of guys at the line of scrimmage. It's not a clean picture. So the urgency for these guys to be mentally sharp, a few times today, they were waiting for the picture to reveal itself. You cannot do that at the college football level, and you can't do it against this defense. They've got to get to the point where they are mentally seeing things before they happen and anticipating it. That way, they're on time, because if you're late, When Will Johnson's a corner, we saw a pick six happen today. So the mental aspect is going to be a big deciding factor in the quarterback battle. I think that tells a lot about what he saw when he was out there, right? You saw a pick six happen. You saw, sort of the quarterback sitting and waiting for things to happen against, what's arguably the best defense in the country. And it's forcing you to make some mistakes a little bit. Maybe there's not as much anticipation, trusting, your gut instinct and where you need to get the ball and getting it out quickly. So when you hear that kind of analysis from Jake Butt, Trent, what does that tell you about what's going on right now in fall camp?
Well, I think two things could be true here. One, quarterback inexperienced. They really don't have a ton of experience. But we're talking about Alex Orji being the starting quarterback, and he has one career passing attempt. Davis Warren hasn't played a ton of football either. But also at the same time, they are going up against a top five, if not the top defense in the whole country. Michigan lost starters from last season on the defense, but they replaced it with a lot of veteran leadership as well. You got Jayshawn Barham back there. He started 2 years for Maryland. They brought in Amir Hall from Albany, an FCS All-American. You brought in Wesley Walker from Tennessee, started every game for them. Mangum from Michigan State started every game for them. My point is, Michigan is a very veteran team on defense, a very tough team. You have that. You're going against an inexperienced quarterback play. I think mistakes are going to happen. Yeah. The good thing for the Michigan quarterbacks is they're not going to be facing the Michigan defense during the games. Like, they're going to be going up against Fresno State's defense. They're going to be going up against USC's putrid defense. USC's been a terrible defense for several years now. So they're not until they get to Oregon and maybe Washington, Ohio State, like, they're not going to be seeing those elite defenses like they're seeing now in practice.
Yeah, I am a little more concerned about USC as the days have gone on than I think a lot of people are. To me, USC is one of those teams, not to get off on USC, but I feel like a lot of people are writing off US. I mean, you've got them at 7-5 in your predictions. A lot of people are just looking at Michigan's schedule and they're like, okay, win here, win here. Oh, USC, that's a win. And you keep going. I don't know, man. We'll see what Lincoln Riley can do. And USC is kind of one of those blue blood programs out west, and it's unusual for them to be in a down period for so long, coming off of like a Caleb Williams era, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. They underachieved obviously last year, but they've got some pieces coming back. So we'll see what USC can be, but I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of people are overlooking that team, and I think it could give Michigan some fits, but yeah, and I've seen it in the comments. Like, that's not necessarily a ringing endorsement of the quarterback situation from Jake Butt, but I think it's an honest assessment. I think it's, and that's what you want to hear. And it shouldn't come as much of a surprise. And there's two reasons for that. One, Michigan's defense is elite. We already know that. And Wink Martindale likes to be aggressive. So I don't know, like, is he throwing the house at these quarterbacks and just saying, like, fuck it, we got to get these guys ready. Like, we're coming at them. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but this defense we know for sure is going to be one of the top defensive units in all of college football. So if you're on the offensive side, number one, you got to deal with that. Number two, the reality is Alex Orji and Davis Warren and Jaden Donegal and Jaden Davis and Jack Tuttle, when he's healthy, I mean, take him out of the equation. The rest of those guys are extremely inexperienced. So you've got inexperienced quarterbacks going up against a veteran defensive line that is extremely aggressive and one of the best in the country. I'm not all that surprised to hear that type of assessment from Jake Butt. And to your point, Trent, you're right. Like, they're not really going to see a defense like that until, I don't know, maybe you get, what's Oregon's defense going to be? I'm not sure. What's Texas going to be like defensively? I'm not exactly sure, but certainly it's the best way to prepare your quarterbacks, because you're not going to see many defenses like that on the schedule, even if it is a tough schedule. Like, that's the toughest defense that offense is probably going to face all year, and they're getting it every day in fall camp. So I do think in a way, even though you'd like to hear a more positivity about what you're seeing out there, let me try to give that some. I'll give you some more positivity, a little bit of positivity. This came from another Big Ten analyst, Yogi Roth, I think is how you say his name. He was out at fall camp as well. He got to take things in. Here was his assessment of what he saw from the quarterbacks. He said, the quarterback competition continues and both quarterbacks have elite traits. are highly competitive and have the it factor. When they walk into a room, their teammates feel their presence and they make everyone around them better. So I don't know. I mean, how much is that going to count on fall Saturdays? I'm not exactly sure. Like, you want your quarterback to have the it factor. You obviously want them to make everyone around them better. And you like to hear that they have elite traits. There really wasn't too much specific beyond that. But Trent, what it tells me is there are some options at quarterback for Michigan, but none of these guys are finished products. And that as we get into the season, we're just going to have to hope that they develop and settle in and get to the point where they can lead this offense where it needs to be. You don't got to be elite offensively. You just got to be good. You got to be solid. You got to not turn the ball over. We've said it a number of times. What do you got to be, Trent? You got to be Cade McNamara 2021. If you can be that, and that's not setting the bar extremely high. I think he had like 15 touchdowns to 6 interceptions that year. Like, he wasn't really asked to do too much.
Take care of the ball.
Yeah, take care of the ball. Don't turn it over. Play your role well. If you can do that, I think the pieces around whoever the quarterback is, and then certainly on the defensive side of the ball, I think Michigan's going to be just fine.
So going back to Jake Butt's assessment, I want to ask you, and then whoever else is watching this can chime in too. Would you be more concerned if he went out there and said Alex Orji, Davis Warren, Jaden Denegal, Jaden Davis, whoever, inexperienced quarterbacks at that, were picking apart the Michigan defense? Like, would that be concerning that they're picking apart are supposed to be a top 5 defense in the country with Will Johnson back there, Makari Page, Wesley Walker, Jair Hill, Zeke Berry? Like, they're picking these guys apart. Would that be more worrisome?
That is a really,
I think so.
That's a really good question.
Because I feel like Jake Butt's assessment is exactly what was probably expected.
Yeah, I would say that his assessment is what was expected. Would I feel better if the Michigan quarterbacks were carving up the Michigan defense? I think there's a part of me that would feel like, okay, we know the quarterbacks can ball. They're doing well. The Michigan defense is good. Do we have some questions in the secondary? But I think I would lean more towards, I mean, you've got, Quentin Johnson in the secondary. You got Makari Page back there. You've got Will Johnson on one side. Yeah, you got to you got Zeke Berry back there, who's been in the program now for a while. I think he's going into his junior season, if I'm not mistaken. But he was a highly rated kid coming out of high school. And then Jair Hill, who's a young corner going into his sophomore year. But you've also got, a veteran over there. If you got to go to Amir Hall, like, if Michigan was, if the offense in particular, the quarterbacks were having a lot of success against the secondary, I don't think I would be as concerned about the defense, because I would just believe that they would figure it out at some point. There's enough talent and experience back there to where I don't know that I'm going to be worried about the defense until I see it becoming a problem on fall Saturdays. So, yeah, I think I would prefer to hear that the quarterbacks were doing well. I mean, we know the Michigan defense is elite. We know they're going to give people problems. And I think, when you dive into what Butt was saying, it's about Michigan's defense and how quickly things happen and what Wink Martindale's scheme is like. But it's also like, how quickly can you start to process things better? You know what I mean? How quickly can you see the field better? I mean, game week is next week. You're going to start playing football games in 10 days. I get a little bit concerned at those types of things, because to me, those are things that take a little while to develop. Now, like I said, maybe you settle in throughout the course of the season, but the problem is you don't have the luxury of playing what amounts to be like, 4 preseason games against scrub opponents. Shout out to Urban Meyer, by the way, who earlier today said that Ohio State's early part of their schedule was a complete joke. Word for word, he said that. Michigan doesn't have that luxury this year. You got Texas coming to town, and then you got USC week 4, and things are going to get real pretty quickly. So that's a really long-winded answer to say, yeah, I think I would feel better if Jake Butt came out and said, those quarterbacks are balling. Like, they got 2 ballers back there. Whatever direction they go, they're going to be just fine. Instead, what he said was, these quarterbacks are going to have to get better in order for Michigan's offense to be effective. And that, to me, gives me a little bit of concern heading into the season. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. Personally, though, like, if he would have been like, yeah, Davis Warren or whoever, Alex Orji is just picking apart the secondary, moving the ball at will on the Michigan's defense, I think that's a little concerning, because you have a new defensive coordinator in there. You have a ton of new players on the defense, even though, like I said earlier, It's a veteran group. I saw somebody put in the comments earlier that usually the defense is ahead of the offense at this point in time. I feel like that would be a little concerning that the defense is giving up play after play to inexperienced quarterbacks right now. Like what, for example, Fresno State, they're no gimme. They've won 9 or more games the last 3 years. They're a aerial attack offense. So if Davis Warren or Alex Orji is picking apart the Michigan defense, like what's Fresno State going to potentially do to Michigan's defense? Like that's where my mind was going.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too. I think that's fair. I'm an emotional wreck, Trent. It's fall camp. We have very little visibility into what's going on. We're just trying to make sense of it all. You're coming off of a national championship season, and you're just like, you want that magic to continue, right? That, there's an ebb and flow to everything, and that, the rivalries go back and forth. But this has been a really fun stretch over the last 3 years, and I'm just not ready for it to end. So I think until we see it on Saturdays, I mean, we can speculate all we want, but I would lean more towards, I'd like to hear that the quarterbacks were performing, or at least reading things quickly, making quick decisions. You know what I mean? Like maybe the defense is breaking it up. Maybe it's just stellar play in the secondary, but at least the quarterback, they're making the right reads. They're getting the ball where it needs to be. It's just tough sledding against this defense. This secondary is elite, but the quarterbacks are doing what they need to do. Like that type of assessment would be totally fine with me. And instead we got like, these are some of the fundamental things, man. You got to read the defense. You got to trust what you're doing. You got to anticipate things. And when you don't do that, you're either taking a sack, losing yards, or you're turning the ball over. And those are two things that Michigan just can't do in 2024. So hopefully we can avoid that. I want to go through some more of these comments or questions. See if I missed anything. Are we going to be at the first game? Yes, we're going to be at every single game. Brandon from the Facebook page, I don't want to do the whole show about the quarterbacks, but he says, disagree. The quarterbacks should get better as the season goes on. They just have to keep winning while they learn. Yeah, I mean, there's truth to that. I think all quarterbacks get better as the season goes on. I mean, do you remember what the reaction was to JJ McCarthy after that Bowling Green game last year?
Yeah.
Right? Where he threw, or was it last year, or was it?
That was 2 years ago, right?
No, that was because Sharon Moore was coaching that game.
Okay, you're right. Yep.
JJ went out and threw like 3 interceptions, and this was coming off of the college football semifinal where he threw some picks against TCU, and then you see it again against Bowling Green, and people are starting to now question, well, can JJ McCarthy be the guy? Can he get us to where we need to be? So certainly JJ McCarthy got better as the season progressed, and I think whoever Michigan goes with, they're going to get better as the season progresses. And I think Kurt Campbell said something to that effect during the spring. Like when they make their decision, they're making it for the long haul. They want to make sure that they've got their guy. I think he specifically said something to the effect of, you don't want to get halfway through the season and realize you got to make a change, or you've got to go to plan B, or whatever it is. So whatever decision they make, I know, Trent, you said you could see maybe it's Orji early, and then he comes out and then he goes back in. I don't know, man. I think, Texas provides them a great opportunity, a great learning experience. It's an out-of-conference game. It will have an impact on the playoff picture, but it won't necessarily prevent you from playing for a Big Ten championship, assuming that you can get there. So, yeah, Brandon, certainly, I don't think that these guys have to be elite right out of the gate, but again, you want to at least hear from a former tight end and a guy who I think Jay Butt's incredible at what he does as far as being a college football analyst. He seems very comfortable in that role. You'd like to hear a different analysis in terms of how they're reading a defense and trusting themselves and sort of anticipating throws. Like those are things that are slightly alarming heading into the season. Is it going to have any sort of impact on what the season ultimately becomes? I don't think so, but I would prefer a different assessment.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to keep comparing Alex Orji to Jalen Milroe, but what happened to Milroe last year? He started the season, he wasn't very good. He got benched after the Texas game for the USF game. Alabama's offense was terrible. I think they scored 9 points in the game. You start Milroe, and look how he ended the season. I mean, I know some people don't really like Jalen Milroe, but he was one of the better quarterbacks in the season because of what he could do from the ground aspect and then through the air. So obviously you saw that progression at a high level throughout the year, and that's what you want from a young, inexperienced quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I got to get back to that to hide. Let's see. Let's get this one. Am I frozen up here? I can't get this comment off. coming up. Like we're just frozen here. I can't get the new comments up. Tyrone from the Facebook page. Look, Tyrone, if I could get your comment on here, I would. Let's see. Show. It's not working. I guess. Trent, are you there?
Dude, what happened? I got kicked.
We both got kicked. We were just out. It was just a blank.
Today, I do not apologize.
I do not. It's crazy. That has never, ever, ever happened. I've been doing this show for 3 years now. I've never been kicked out of a show. I thought I was going to have to start it all over.
Like
and
you went out for like 2 seconds, and all of a sudden my screen went black, and I'm like, what's going on here?
I don't know what the hell happened. I'm trying to get back to the question. I think maybe I just did a little too many clicks there. Let's try to go back up to Tyrone's question.
You gotta get better internet, man.
We're not gonna skip a beat here. I don't know if it's the internet. I think it was my computer. I was just overwhelmed by all of the traffic in the comment section here, and all the thousands of people tuned in to watch us live. My HP can only handle so much. But let's get to Tyrone's question from the Facebook page. Tyrone, thank you for your question. He says, what's the thought on the offensive line at Michigan? Trent, you and I have talked about this before. I'll let you take the lead on this. We know that replacing 6 guys, a lot of guys now in the NFL, entirely new offensive line. Where's your confidence level about that group?
I'm really high on the offensive line. Like I've said before, you're talking about 5 guys that have ample experience. Miles Hinton, left tackle. He started last year for Michigan before an injury kind of derailed that. They brought in Josh Preeb from Northwestern. He was an all Big Ten player, captain. Even Greg Crippen. And I'm guessing Andrew Gentry starts at right tackle. Both of those guys, they've been around the program. They've both played plenty of football games for Michigan. And then right guard, you got Gio El-Hadi. I mean, once again, the dude started meaningful football games for Michigan. I get that you lost all 5 starters from the O-line, but I don't know, man. I think they're going to be really good. I don't think it's going to skip much of a beat either.
I agree 100%. I don't think offensive line is going to be an issue for this team. And I think that, even though a lot of things have changed, a lot of new faces, a lot of new people in different positions, obviously the entire starting unit for the offensive line is going to be new. These are guys that have played football. Trent, you said it. Josh Preeb, I think is how you say his last name. He was a captain at Northwestern. He's a veteran guy. Giovanni, he's a veteran guy. He's been in the program for a while. Miles Hinton was a starter at certain points last year. Massive guy, transfer out of Stanford. I mean, they have pieces there where I think the offensive line is going to be just fine in terms of what they have on the roster. But Sharon Moore is also still there. And Sharon Moore, I know that everybody's big on Grant Newsome, and rightfully so. He is a rising star in college football coaching. But Sharon Moore is still in the building as well. And he's proven that he knows how to develop an elite offensive line. And so I certainly don't think I don't anticipate that this offensive line is going to take a step back at all. And once again, I think it all hinges on the quarterback play. I think the offensive line will be fine. I think the wide receiver play will be fine. Tight end, we know what we got there. Running backs, you're about as deep as you're going to get. If you can get solid quarterback play, everything else I think is going to be just fine and will work. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like both of us are right on the same page as far as the offensive line is concerned. I love this comment or this question from Mark. Let me get this back in here. I want to get this up here because I had it in before I got booted out. Hell, maybe that's one of the reasons why I got kicked out. See if we can get it on here. Mark from the Facebook page, he says, will we make the playoffs? Will Michigan be in the playoff? Before we get to that, Trent, I saw this come up earlier. It was from On3. They sort of put out their college football playoff bracketology for the preseason and you know, maybe how they see things playing out. Regardless of whether or not you think certain team, you know, is Kansas State going to be a 4th seed? I don't think so. But I mean, I just think overall, when you look at what a 12-team playoff picture looks like, you've got Michigan up there at number 9 in the first round, having to go down to Ole Miss and play that game on the road. Just an incredible, I think, product for college football. You know, Texas, Notre Dame. You've got, you know, Tennessee going to Oregon. I said this before we went live. I'm not sure, you know, how Boise State's going to do on the road against Alabama, but this scenario is very realistic, right? Where you have Michigan playing Ole Miss on the road. You got to go down to Oxford. You got to face Lane Kiffin. We talked about him on Monday's show. We're both big fans of Lane Kiffin. But the cool thing about this is if you look at this college football bracket and you sort of read it a little bit, it tells you kind of how the Big Ten season plays out, right? You've got Ohio State at the number 1 seed, getting the first round bye. And there you've got Oregon at number 6. And so this to me tells me that Ohio State and Oregon end up playing the Big Ten championship game. Oregon loses it. Ohio State wins it. Michigan gets into the playoff with 2 regular season losses as the 9 seed. But you go down to Oxford and you beat Ole Miss in the first round, and now you get Ohio State in the college football playoff semifinal with a chance to go play for a national championship. And this kind of goes into the conversation that we had on Monday, Trent, where I said, you know, like, would it be great to win a Big Ten championship? Absolutely. Like you want to be in that game, but the 12-team playoff and the lack of divisions and sort of where college football has transitioned to is conference championships are okay, but to me, things are way more like the NFL right now. And we know that the only thing that matters in the NFL is a Lombardi Trophy. You want to go get the Super Bowl, and that's where college football is headed. So again, you talk about the value of the regular season matchup. Like, yeah, Michigan could lose that final week in November to Ohio State and then have a chance to get right back at them in the college football playoff. And we've already talked about this. A semifinal win against the Buckeyes is going to trump any sort of regular season win you're going to have over the Buckeyes. And so, you know, I don't want to get into that conversation about devaluing the game, but that's how this sets up. So let's get back to Mark's question. I mean, first, Trent, let me ask you, you've got Michigan at 10-2 on the season. Do you think the Wolverines are in the playoffs?
If Michigan goes 10-2 with the schedule that it has, yeah, it's absolutely in. I mean, you're talking about one of the more difficult schedules out there. And if what they have to do is beat one of Ohio State, Oregon, or Texas, and then take care of business the rest of the way. And Michigan's in easily. I mean, you're probably looking at like an 8 or 9 seed, but you're in and you have a chance to make some noise in the college football playoff. And unfortunately, I feel like the old college tradition's kind of gone. Like you said, it's all about the CFP now. And you're at a 12-team playoff, and the only thing that matters between like Michigan and Ohio State in this scenario is whatever happens in the current game. Like, yeah, Michigan could have lost to Ohio State during the regular season. Emotionally, it's not fun, but like what actually matters is what would happen in that next game they play each other. Yeah,
there's no question about it. And I mean, it's tough sledding being James Franklin. I mean, here you are, first 4 out, getting kicked in the dick once again. Like, James Franklin, do you I wonder this, like we know that Ryan Day has had some success, right? But I mean, is James Franklin another one of those coaches that's potentially on the hot seat heading into this year? He seems to just, Penn State is one of those teams that routinely comes up short when it matters most. They haven't really had a breakthrough season under James Franklin yet. I mean, how do you feel about that situation? If, Penn State, you've got them at 10-2, being left out of the playoff. They're not playing for a Big Ten championship. Once again, Penn State comes up short. Is he a coach that you think is sort of teetering on that hot seat sort of status?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's on the same level as Ryan Day, like hot seat wise, but yeah, I think you have to put him on the hot seat. I mean, Penn State, they're one of those top programs. I don't know that they're a blue blood essentially, but they're still one of those top programs out there. And obviously they want to make some noise at some point in time. And every year it seems like it's Penn State's year. And then also every year James Franklin loses 1 or 2 games that he should not lose. And it happens every year. So eventually Penn State's going to have to do something about it.
Yep, no doubt about it. Matt Kirby talking about Ryan Day's anatomy, saying his sphincter would tighten up under this playoff scenario. Yeah, I mean, assuming he's able to escape the Wolverines in Columbus, you certainly don't want to have to play that team twice. And that's another thing that I wonder. Like, how would Ohio State fans react to that? Right? You beat the Wolverines down in Columbus, you get in the playoff, then you got to face them in the semifinal, and you lose. Like, is that an acceptable scenario for Ryan Day? You win the Big Ten championship. Obviously, you beat Michigan in the regular season, but then you lose to them in the playoffs. That's got to stick.
If they go 1-out in the playoff, I don't care if it's to Michigan, to Notre Dame, whoever. If they go 1-out, that's not acceptable at all. It's
the best team in college football over the last 10 years, according to Urban Meyer. So, I mean, if it really does feel like, hey, win a national championship this year or your ass has got to be out. I mean, that was what I heard from Urban Meyer. When you say something like that, the only thing that could possibly hold you back is bad coaching. So, But yeah, to answer your question, Mark, I think I think Michigan is also going to be in the playoff, but I think Joel Klatt said it recently. Like there is, and I said this a while ago. I actually put it out in an article. Maybe Joel Klatt's tuning into the show, reading our content, listening to what we're saying. But I said one of 2 things need to happen this season in order for Michigan to consider it a success. You've either got to beat Ohio State, regardless of what the rest of the record looks like. You could have 4 losses on the regular season schedule, but if one of the wins comes against Ohio State in Columbus on November 30th, even if Michigan misses the playoffs, I think Michigan fans would take that. And it would be glorious to beat the Buckeyes down in Columbus for a 4th straight time. But if that doesn't happen, if you don't beat Ohio State on November 30th, if you're Michigan, that means you're not in the you're not in the Big Ten championship. You've got to get yourself in the college football playoff. If you go a season where you lose to Ohio State, you don't play for a conference championship, and you're out of the 12-team playoff, that to me is a nightmare scenario for this team. And I do think there's enough weapons here to where they can get themselves in the playoffs, but you're going to have to win a couple games that you're not going to be favored in, right? You're going to have to beat Texas. You're going to have to beat, you might have to beat Oregon. You might have to beat Ohio. I mean, you're going to have to get some wins. There's that 5-game stretch there where you can't afford to shit the bed. And, outside of Texas, Michigan will have a little bit of time to get things right before it gets hectic when you face Oregon, Washington on the road, obviously Ohio State at the end of the season. So, yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's a playoff team. But, dude, just looking at this bracket, this is what excites me. Like I've told you before, I hate change. College football is going in a certain direction that I just don't like. I think we're well on our way to, super conferences. And there's already talk about, what Florida State's move is going to be as soon as bowl season's over. They're going to make a bid to join a big conference, and there's more alignment that's coming. And so, the college football game that we grew up with and we all came to love, that is slowly going away. But when I look at this playoff bracket and I know that these first round games are on campus games, you got Notre Dame going down to Texas, like, that's incredible TV. I can't wait for that to play out, and we're going to get that this year. So I'm excited.
The only thing that would make this even better was if Michigan had a home game, and you're talking about Ole Miss, or you're talking about Alabama, whoever from the SEC coming to Ann Arbor for a home game like that. Yeah. That would make it even, just top it all off.
I mean, I would love to see that flipped, have Ole Miss come up to Ann Arbor for sure. I mean, that to me, like, you don't want to be, in the first round games. You'd prefer to get the first round bye if you can. But if we get a first round game in Ann Arbor in the Big House in late December this year, sign me up for it. I'm totally fine with that. And I know that it means that Michigan's going to hit a few speed bumps along the way, but I think most reasonable fans have gotten to the point where they've accepted that that's going to be the case. And so there's not a Michigan fan within that fan base that doesn't want to see a playoff game take place in the big house. That would just be incredible, historic on so many levels. Ralph from the Facebook page says Rutgers will be in the playoff. You know, we walked through this on the Monday show. Trent's got them finishing at what, 9-3 in the regular season. There's a chance they could get themselves to 10-2. And then, I mean, dude, a scenario where Rutgers is in the playoffs. I mean, I don't know. That sounds crazy to me, but 9-3 is not that far off from 10-2. So obviously there's a lot of other factors at play and who's ranked where at that point. But certainly, yeah, given the schedule, Rutgers could find themselves into the playoff, no doubt.
Scrappy team.
Scrappy team. Gotta love Greg Schiano. Where are we going with this? Any more questions or comments? We're at 50 minutes. By the way, shout out to everybody that stayed in here after we just dipped for like 3 minutes, completely disappeared.
I was expecting to come back and nobody was here.
I was surprised that the show was still going live. I thought that would have cut out too. It just kicked my ass out. So, but we came back in and there were still like 50 people here just chilling, being like, well, we'll wait. So incredible crowd here tonight for Fan-Led Wednesday. Still looking for questions or topics. Let me make sure. He says Ralph is drunk by suggesting that Rutgers would be in the playoffs. I mean, unless you're also assuming that Trent's crazy. I mean, he's got them at 9-3. So that's, if you're in the Big Ten and you go 10-2, you're a fringe playoff team at that point. There's no doubt about it. Southeastern teams are going to get smoked if they play up north. I mean, I think that's the general belief. Yeah. Here we go. This looks like a question. I haven't read it through. Brandon says, do you guys want Fresno State to give us a game in the first week, or do you just want to see Michigan blast them 40-0? I kind of want to see a game, Brandon says. That's actually, I don't know, man. That's that is a good.
If Fresno State gives Michigan a game, I think the whole fan base will melt down because they're going to be like, well, if Fresno State's giving us a game, then what's Texas going to do to us next week?
But you just got done talking about how Fresno State's a solid team, 9 wins every year. You know what I mean? They're not going to be a pushover. So, yeah, Brandon, I mean, I get where you're going with the question. Certainly, yeah, if Michigan could be tested, they get into a game, you know what I mean? So that sort of thing. You don't want it to happen against Fresno. Like, you're going to be tested against Texas. Like, that's where the test should come. I'm with you, Trent. I feel like if they get into this Fresno State game and it's like a 4-quarter battle, people are going to be very nervous about what Texas is going to look like the following week.
Yeah, it's not like they have a game in between, like an Arkansas State game in between there to try to get things going. Like, they go straight to Texas.
Yeah,
well, Texas comes to Michigan.
Kirby says, I want to blast him. Bobby says he wants a blowout. Yeah, Rashad, he wants no part of a close game with Fresno State. Nick from the YouTube page, he says over under receiving yards for Tyler Morris, assuming he's wide receiver 1. Are you talking about on the season?
Yeah, one game or?
I think Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson, they, and even Colston Loveland was in this, but they all had right around 600, 700 yards receiving, right, as the top receivers. I mean, if I was to put an over under, I mean, Trent, where do you, because I don't think it's going to be too much different from what we saw before. You got Samaj Morgan in the mix. You got Frederick Moore in the mix. You've got CJ Charleston, the transfer. You got Amarion Walker there. You got Peyton O'Leary, who's an unknown, but he's a veteran in that group. Where would you set the over under for Tyler Morris on receiving yards for the season?
I would say, because I think Loveland's going to have a huge increase to his yardage this year. He had, I think, 649 last year. I look for that to take a sizable jump. So I would say 650.5 for Tyler Morris.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right where it's going to be. And I think that, to go back to Kurt Campbell, once again, when we heard from him, and this might have been during fall camp or heading into fall. It was on the eve of fall camp. So they sent out some of the coordinators. We got to talk to Wink Martindale, and then we got to talk to Kurt Campbell. And Kurt Campbell, talking about Tyler Morris, he said, this is his time. This is your time. Like, you are a leader now in this offense. And so it certainly sounds like he is going to play a major role. He's going to be that, the Roman Wilson next guy, sort of the Ronnie Bell type in line. He's got the same type of body type. And, when you talk to him, you can hear that he's reached a certain level of maturity where he's ready to take that next step. So what does that equate to in terms of yards? Yeah, I think 650 is probably a pretty safe mark. He's going to be right around there. I don't think you're going to get too much more up over 700 yards as a Michigan wide receiver, not because of any sort of issue you have as a receiver, but that's just not the way the Michigan offense is built.
The last Michigan receiver to have over 1,000 yards was 2013 by Jeremy Gallen. I didn't realize that until I was looking stuff up.
Jeremy Gallen was a baller. Like that guy,
Yep.
I think against Indiana, he's got like the single game receiving record in yards.
Yeah.
I think like 450 receiving yards against Indiana, something like that. Like, and then, you know, the first game under the lights in the big house, Jeremy Gallen coming through with big plays, obviously Roy Roundtree at the end of the game, but Jeremy Gallen made a lot of big plays to get Michigan in position. So he's definitely one of those all-time underrated wide receivers. I feel like people really don't talk a lot about Jeremy.
No, I think it's because of the time frame that he played in. Like Michigan wasn't. I mean, there was some fun stuff that happened in there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a good time for Michigan.
Trying to block it out. I don't know. I mean, I'll always have fond memories of that era strictly because Denard Robinson. Like even to this day, like, you know, with all the success Michigan's had over the last 3 years, when I sit back and like who was my favorite player to watch, he's still at the top of the list. And I think it was because there was such an emotional swing with it anyway. Like you truly didn't know, is Michigan going to win today or are they going to get their asses beat? Is Denard Robinson going to go off for 250 yards passing and rushing, or is he going to struggle and you know, get sacked 7 times? And so sitting back and sort of watching that play out, it was cinema. And a lot of times Denard Robinson just delivered and he was incredible, man. I mean, my all-time favorite player at the University of Michigan.
How about Tate Forcier though? that first year, it's like, oh, Michigan has a quarterback, Tate Forcier.
A lot of quarterback. Tate Forcier, Shane Morris in there. We had Brandon Peters for a little bit. John O'Corn for a little bit.
Nick Sheridan, Stephen
Wilton
Three
State for a little bit. Like, you know, there's been some guys to come through Ann Arbor, and then we were blessed with JJ McCarthy and Matt Kirby. Let's not forget Cade McNamara. We don't want to leave him out of the picture, but yeah, I think, you know, maybe this is a good place to end it as we're approaching 56 minutes. But, you know, going back to, you know, Jake Rudock, who was solid. I mean, you know, 10 wins in his first season coming over from Iowa, got us. I mean, one of Jim Harbaugh's few bowl wins, right? I mean, they went and played Florida. Where was that? Was it in the Citrus Bowl in his first year? I believe it was. They played Florida. They got the win, 10-win season. Matt Kirby in all caps says Big Ten champion Cade. Yes, we will never take that away from him. Travis, yes, we will be at the Fresno State game. We're going to be at all the games. But we'll end it with where we started. I mean, you know, going back to the quarterbacks, right? Like this is what the conversation is now. And I would anticipate, I mean, we've got captains that are going to be announced, if not tonight, tomorrow. You know, so I think that's going to be telling on where the leaders stand. And I mean, there's some guys that pretty much a shoe-in, right? I mean, Donovan Edwards, captain on this team. They're just certain guys that you think are. I think Makari Page is going to. Everybody that they sent to Big Ten media days, Max Bredeson's going to be in there, rightfully so. Wouldn't be surprised to see Gio on the offensive line, a guy who's talked about paying his dues and staying with the program and didn't leave, and now he's a veteran guy.
I feel like Miles Hitton's another good possibility, just because I feel like he's kind of been, when you watch the videos and stuff like that, he's been talked to quite a bit, and I know he's been at a couple pressers, so he's another possibility.
Potentially, which I think if that happens, he would become the first transfer to be named a captain at the University of Michigan, which would be noteworthy. I don't think any other incoming transfers have earned the title of captain status. And then I think Rod Moore, right? I mean, Rod Moore, we know, is probably not going to play this season. You know, maybe he can come back toward the latter part of the year and play. But, I mean, this is a veteran guy who came back, you know, could have gone to the NFL, could have entered his name into the draft, probably got picked up by a team. Not sure where he would have went in the draft. But to me, Rod Moore is a captain all day on this team. Now that he's injured, he's sort of taken on the role as coach, so he can be captain and coach. I saw some people in the comments, they mentioned Mason Graham and Will Johnson being captains. Michigan traditionally doesn't do that for underclassmen, so I wouldn't expect to see any juniors as captains. But who knows? It's it's a new era. It's Sharon Moore, but also Sharon Moore, he really embraces all of the tradition Christ, he's got a bronze bust of Jim Harbaugh and Bo Schembechler in his coaching office. He's wearing the skinny Block M hat because Schembechler and Harbaugh wore it. This guy embraces tradition. My hunch is you're going to see a group of seniors that are, I think the real question is how many does he go with? Last year it was 6, right? And you lost.
Usually it's 4, right? Yeah, last year was 6.
Last year was 6, and you lost all 6 guys. Do you bring up 6 again? Is it 4? I think it's going to be really interesting to see. But yeah, man, quarterback play, that's going to be the deciding factor for Michigan. I think everybody's on the same boat, and we're 10 days away from seeing what that looks like for the first time under the lights, back in the big house with Fresno State coming to town. Trent, I think this was a pretty good show. Shout out to everybody in the comments.
For staying in, for just,
dealing with all of the shit that sometimes you got to deal with by watching us live, but we really appreciate it. The comment section was super active, and so we appreciate that. And once again, Monday's pre-record. Wednesday we'll be back live. Not this Friday. Next Friday we'll be back with our game predictions, and then it's football season. It's here. We get games this weekend, Trent.
Yeah, week 0. What is it? Notre Dame and Georgia Tech and Florida State, isn't it?
Georgia Tech, Florida State, Hawaii plays somebody. I don't care. Just give me college football. I'm sure you guys are excited. We'll see you we'll see you Monday, and then we'll see you back Wednesday live.
Yep.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
She's touching his chest now.